Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Student Pages podcast. I'm joined by Grayson Gurnsey. How are you, Grayson? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much.
You might know Grayson from Game On, Virgin River. He was in Art of Racing in the Rain last year. You would have been the year below me in school. You were born in 2000, right?
Yeah. That's true.
And you went to school in Canada. You weren't like homeschooled or anything.
Actually, that's funny because I was homeschooled when I eventually got into acting, but I was in school for most of my life until I started taking acting really seriously because I had to travel at that point for my work, and then I became homeschooled, which worked out really well because then I got to go to Africa.
What happened there?
Oh well, when I was 10, my mentor at the time was dipping his toes into like writing and directing, and somewhere along, I don't even know how it came up, but he had this idea for a story about this woman who travels to like Africa, and I was the son, and he had apparently looked for like quite some time and couldn't find anyone. He was like, "Grayson, do you want to do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd like to go to Africa. I don't even know why you asked." But yeah, no, we ended up going to Africa, and it was an insane experience. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm homeschooled. It's because I had to go to Africa for 2 months.
Where were you in Africa?
I was in Kenya, Nairobi.
Nice.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Okay. So what were you filming there? What were you doing there?
It was this TV show. I can't find it to save my life. Like, I've scoured the internet. I've looked through streaming services, everything. It was called Saints. It was West Africa's first medical drama, which like it was weird. I had no idea that it was such big ground to break back then because I didn't really think about that. That was like one of the first times I'd ever actually gotten to act, which was like the real person who made me make my mind up was I loved Jackie Chan. I would watch all of his movies. And somewhere along the line, my brain was like, Jackie Chan's an actor. I could be an actor and then basically become Jackie Chan, right? That's how it works. So at the like age of 4, I was like, I will become an actor to become Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And is that part of why? Because I saw you doing boxing on your Instagram. Is that part of your mission to become Jackie Chan as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I do it for like new experiences, but I was like, it wouldn't hurt to basically like be able to maybe like do my own stunts down the line. That's like one of my favorite things to watch. Like just a good like Jackie Chan film or something like that, or like some sort of like weird movie where like the choreography is just insane. It's like a good time. It's like a great way to de-stress.
And when you were younger, because I always think like because I did a little bit of acting when I was younger as well, and
cool.
Like when I look back on it, there's part of me that's like proud of that little version of myself. I'm like, oh, like that's great. But there's also I do sort of cringe looking back on it a little bit because you don't expect that time in your life to be so well documented, you know. Do you get that when you look back on like your younger self and you're like, oh man, like
yeah, it was definitely weird. Actually, that's funny because a few months ago, we have like, because since a lot of the stuff I taped for or I'd auditioned for was in like New York, LA, Atlanta sort of thing, I would always end up sending self-tapes. I would very rarely go in the room for a lot of auditions unless they were like in Vancouver. So we have like 5 different USBs or like 5 different like hard drives of just like auditions. And we found it a couple of days ago, and we looked through some of my earliest auditions, and it's like, oh, it makes my skin crawl. I hated watching myself back then. I hated watching old me now. Like, oh, it's so funny because I'm like, oh, he's cute but a horrible actor. And I was just like thinking that. My mom's like, you're such a horrible person. And I'm like, I can't help it. Like sure, I was cute as a button, but like, holy crap, he could have said that line 1,000 different ways, and that was what he chose. Like, why'd you let me do that? And she was like, I don't know. But like, we'd get into arguments about auditions I had like 7-8 years ago. So it's fun. I cringe.
Yeah, with Game On, because a lot of it is based around the idea of it's like being an embarrassing teenager.
Oh yeah,
Were
yeah.
there, were there any scenes that were actually very embarrassing to film?
Let me think. Um there was one scene that was very oh yeah, there was this one episode where I was supposed to like twerk or something. Oh yeah, because yeah, no, let me explain. The idea was he was going over to this girl who he has like a major crush on, is throwing a party, and no one wants to dance, but he wants to dance with her, so he like kind of like starts it off by like starting to dance or something like that, and then somewhere along the line he tries to twerk, and I had to try and learn how to twerk, but I didn't actually understand what that was. So it just it just looked ridiculous. Looking back on it, I'm like, that's not what twerking is like at all. Why did I think that that's what it was? And
Since that, have you've learned how to twerk, or did you have a twerk
yes,
coach for that?
yeah, I hired a twerk coach after that. It worked out great. My twerk is fantastic now. So
I'm glad to hear it. Can we have a little? I'm joking. I'm not going to make you
yeah, let me just get off my chin.
because I hadn't heard about Game On before, and when I understood kind of what the show was about, it made me think of a show that we had in the UK. I don't know if you've ever heard of Pete versus Life.
No, I haven't. No.
We had it's they're very different shows, but Pete versus Life is like it's sort of like Toby, but he's in his 30s, and it's like 10 times more British. It's like,
So
soccer
like,
commentators. And I was just wondering if you'd heard of it, because
no, I
it's
haven't, but it sounds awesome. I'd actually give that a watch.
yeah,
Pete
give it
versus
a try.
Life. I'm gonna have to like mark that down before I forget it. But that's interesting. It's funny because actually I think Game On was based on a different kind of show. It was like Norwegian or something. I can't exactly remember, but yeah, it was the idea is it was kind of like this like very almost American take on this like Norwegianish show or something like that, and he was like, oh, the show's like 100% different. They're not gonna be like when the director and producers were talking to me. That's like the show's 100% different. It's nothing like the show. It's just they're vaguely based on each other. And I was like, oh, that's neat. And they had like this whole plan for like oh yeah, and if we do a season 2, you'll like head to Norway and you two will like do a scene together. And I was like, what? No way. Are you kidding? He's like, yeah, I'm not even joking. And I was like, oh, that'd be so cool. Like, this is like my 15-year-old brain just like fucking like imploding, like going, oh yeah, I'd love to do a scene based on like with the guy who's like in the same TV show basically, but in a different country. Like, I'd love that. They're like, yeah, that's what we're gonna do. I was like, just going insane when I heard about that. And I was like, we never got a season 2, but it was a good thought to have. And it kept me going through all of season 1. I was like, I'd love to do that. But yeah.
Yeah, man, that would have been great. Have you ever seen the Norwegian version of the show, or
No, I don't even know what it's
find
called.
it?
Like, I couldn't find it. They just said it was based off a show. For some reason, they never told me what the name was, but I was like, I've been like, I looked it up a few times and scoured the internet. Like, it wouldn't be very easy to find anyways, because it would be like, I don't know, like hard to find on a streaming service, but I suppose I've done weirder stuff, but yeah.
Have you done weirder stuff?
I've done really stupid stuff. I did this one. This wasn't dumb, or this wasn't like weird, but like, man, I hurt myself a lot doing this. I learned how to play soccer for this role, and they wanted me to do a bicycle kick. See, the thing is I hadn't played soccer in my life, but it was so funny because I had trained with this guy, and we'd gotten this rhythm of when he throws the ball in this very specific way, I can like kick it like every single time. But that guy wasn't in the same city. Like, I had to go to a different city to film this movie, and the other guy just didn't, like, because he was a professional soccer coach, but he just couldn't throw the ball right. So I ended up, and they had like, I was like falling onto like hard grass. I trained in like this little on this like huge cushy mat, but I was falling onto hard grass. They had like a styrofoam mat like that thick. So I was like just like falling. We ended up filming the scene for like 30 minutes, and it was just me straight and just I just kept on jumping, missing the ball, and then it's like landing on my ribs. Jump up, miss the ball, land on my shoulder, and it was like by the end of it, I had this like bruise all down my back, and I didn't want to say
Oh,
anything, but I
man.
was like, I
Which
finally
one was it?
figured out how to do it. But it was this short called Return of the Pendragon. I don't know if you'd be able to find it. It's hard for me to find, but it was so much fun doing that. Like I went to my hometown, filmed a fun little movie, but man, that was probably one of the hardest things I've done. Like learning how to do that bicycle kick, and then when I finally got it, it looked good, and I was like, wow, thank God. Oh, that hurt. That was like
The
it
idea
was
that
way more painful than I thought it was gonna be.
you would grow up and not know how to play like soccer or football to a British person is crazy, because everyone just you
Yeah,
have there's just a ball about, and you learn how to kick it about.
yeah,
But even so, I don't think I ever saw a bicycle kick actually. Oh, and actually maybe once, and everyone went completely mental. I actually saw
yeah.
someone manage to bicycle kick something in.
Oh,
Um,
seriously?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I went to,
I
I went
haven't
to,
ever seen it, but yeah. Like
I went to
I had to Google it. I had no idea what it was. I'm like, who would ever like this sounds impossible. Who would actually like have the time to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do like a flip basically and try and kick it in instead of
yeah, it
just
doesn't
like
happen very often in professional football. Um,
yeah, no. I was like, man, this is so impractical, but it looks great.
they don't have people don't backflip in hockey.
Well, I mean, if we could, we would, but then you gotta balance on those little skates, I guess. It's like
Yeah,
whole thing, right? Yeah. But they do other flashy, dumb stuff like beating each other up. That's what they do. Yeah,
I've heard
that's the
about
hockey
that.
thing.
Yeah. When you were doing game on, um, and I'm gonna try not. This is like a cheeky question, but
Okay.
I'm gonna ask first of all, like when like was game on kind of the moment where you thought, oh, I can really go somewhere with this, like I can, I can make this my livelihood, or
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I I had been in Vancouver here for a while at this point, but I hadn't booked anything like significant, or I hadn't done a lot of work. And my parents and me were both kind of like a little worried because we were like, something's got to come eventually. Because I'd like almost basically moved to Vancouver for like 2 years at that point, and I had booked small things. But after a while, you have to, move beyond that. And then I did get Game On, and it was this huge thing where it was like, oh my God, that's my show. Well, Jonathan Torrance and Samantha Bee are huge, so it's their show too. But it was like at the moment I was like, it's my show. I never thought I'd ever have a show of my own,
Hmm.
and I was like, whoa! Like neither me or my parents ever saw that coming. Like we thought I was okay, like not like that, but like
very
I
humble.
was
Yeah, yeah.
like I thought it was kind of like so, but my parents like they're champions of me. But when I got it, I was like, oh, does that actually mean that I'm like good? And it like set us all up for going, oh yeah,
Hmm.
no, I could make a career out of this. And it just like revolutionized like our entire look on what we thought about like one, my acting career, and two, how I like interacted with space from now on. I was like, yeah, I was the lead in my own show. And it did it's funny, like it did help the confidence. But
And
yeah,
here's the cheeky question. Do you remember your first big? Was that your first big paycheck?
oh, I'd say that's definitely one of my first, that was like my biggest paycheck at the time. I think what we did was we just like I remember this. So it was like something nice. It was like numbers, but basically my mom was like, so this is what you made on the show. And then she was like, took 99% of it off. And then she was like, and this is what you get to walk around with. And she like put the rest into savings. And she's like, and you're not allowed to touch it. And I was like, oh, no, mom. And she was like, you're going to spend it on stupid stuff. And I think you'd much rather save it from when you're like 25 and you want money. And I was like, fine. But now I actually completely understand that. And I don't spend my money anymore. I just I like 90% of it all into savings. But that's what we ended up doing. And I had like $1,000 to play with for like a year. I'd like go and I'd spend like $500 at a time on like stupid stuff, like clothes or something like that.
You're gonna need the bulk of that money to impress women in your 20s. So
True.
you'll be glad.
That's where I got to spend all my money. I got to save it all up through my teens, and then spend it in my 20s. So
you've got to take girls to bars and pick up the tab, and that's going to be you've got to get a car as well.
Yeah, I mean, shots are expensive too, like $7 a pop. So I can't, you got to save up for that kind of thing. And yeah, like you're saying, like expensive cars, like so much money to spend so little time.
And obviously, it feels weird we haven't talked about Virgin River yet.
Oh yeah,
I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about how do you feel that you are different from your character, Ricky, and similar to your character?
Oh, okay. The way I'm very similar is we are both like, at least through all of season 1, we're both like this very like awkward gangly thing. Like in the script it states how he's like quite clumsy, and I had a scene where I was supposed to be taking out like a tray of pints, and I had it on like this, like one of those whatever, like waitress trays or whatever you call them, and I was taking it through one of those like kitchen doors, and just as I like came out through the kitchen door, I was like, oh man, I did it without dropping any of these pints. And then like the kitchen door came back and like hit me in the back, and I like dropped all of them in the middle of the scene, in the middle of a 5-page scene, which is huge. And I was like, no. And the actors are so cool, and they just somehow kept going. But
Oh, wow.
it was hilarious because what happened was like I had to like run back into the kitchen area, and I heard because the glass was still on the ground while they were doing the scene, and then I heard as like Martin Henderson, the guy who was behind the bar in that scene, you could hear him like walk from one end of the bar to another, and you could hear just like the crunch, crunch, crunch as he was like walking over the glass. And I was like, oh my God, they're gonna fire me. And they were like, oh, that's hilarious. And they ended up giving me like the shorter glasses, like the whiskey glasses, so I didn't have to drop them all again. But yeah, that's how I'm similar. But how I'm not similar is like, how am I not similar? That's a great question, actually. That's the first time anyone's asked me how I'm not similar. I don't know how I'm not similar. I'd say maybe living in a big city has made me like insanely impatient. I don't know. I'm the guy who like hates it when there's any sort of traffic stop, and I feel like Ricky would be like so calm, and I'm like, like I have to have like specific tunes for like when I'm stopped in traffic to like calm me down, because I hate traffic. But Ricky's never had traffic. He's in a small town. So would he have the same problems as I do? Probably not. I don't know. I'm pulling things out of thin air because I have no idea. We're so similar that I have very few things to pull on from how we're not similar.
Understandable. But it's so is that, did you not grow up in a quaint little countryside place? Like in my head, like all Canadians grow up in like log cabins kind of by bears.
It's fair. I mean, that's you get up north, that's very true. You get anywhere like outside of a city, that's actually very true. But I'm like, I've grown up luckily mostly in a city. Vancouver is pretty big. I mean, it's and it's got all these like, it's funny. It's almost like Vancouver is a sun, and it has all these teeny little mini cities that like orbit around Vancouver. It's called Greater Vancouver. There's like a dozen different cities that like line downtown Vancouver. But yeah, no, it's a big place. So we're lucky to grow up in like a city energy, but there are other places like Saskatchewan that are like just a bunch of small towns and there's like 2 cities, or like Calgary, which is basically just like you got 3 cities and that's it. The rest are small towns. 3 cities in like that huge place that's like the size of like England, basically. Like just like, and it's just 3 cities. 3 cities, and everything else is like 1,000, 2,000 people towns. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
it's insane.
our whole country is like one big city, and then everything else is like, well, I mean, London is the only city in the UK that has its own like, or maybe Glasgow has one as well, but that has its own like underground train system, and everything else you sort of have to get around by bus. So that's
Interesting.
the scale we're working with. I'd love to go to Canada one day, though. It sounds places like Saskatchewan sound like that's like the idea of
it's funny, right? Like going to Saskatchewan, it's like another world too, because it's like this whole section of Canada that's like nothing else is like it, with the people and the scenery and stuff. Like that whole thing about like watching your dog run away for 3 days. Like, have you heard of that before? Like
I've
that.
heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, you could, in theory, watch someone run away for like a little bit under a day. Like actually, it's so flat. It's insane. It's actually pretty amazing to drive through, but it's weird at the same time.
That's great. Listen, we're pretty much out of time, but thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today, Grayson.
Yeah, thank you. This was awesome. I wish I did more podcasts like this. This is great.
That's what I love to hear.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, everyone, for listening to the Student Pages podcast. Catch you next time.